Let's take a look at the Incursors, the new Primaris Space Marine unit that's aiming to dominate the midfield objective game. Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, the Imperial-focused tactics channel aiming to help you squash Xenos and heretics throughout the galaxy. In this video we'll be taking a look at the Incursor squad, the alternative build from the Infiltrator kit, a squad equipped with different guns and a few different options and special rules. In the new fluff they're a unit that's famed for its rapid assaults. They'll basically run at you, and with all of their sensory gear, they have a marksman bolt carbine and Auspex that feeds directly into their visual field. There'll be no hiding from these guys no matter how thick fortifications you're behind. It also mentions that they can see their foes through solid walls, thick smoke and absolute darkness, so there's really no hiding from them. On this channel in particular, we like to see Auspexes in action, so this is great. So what can these guys do for you on the tabletop? To start with, you buy the squad of 5 models, which is 4 Incursors and an Incursor Sergeant, and they cost you 95 points, so that's 19 points per model. They have the exact same stat line as the Intercessors in every way, which I won't cover again here. Basically 2 wound, 2 attack Primaris bodies. They're equipped with a bolt pistol, an Oculus bolt carbine, paired combat blades, frag grenades, crack grenades, and smoke grenades. The Oculus bolt carbine is again a slight variant on the bolter stat line. Like a bolter, it's a 24-inch rapid fire 1, strength 4, damage 1 weapon with no AP, but when you resolve an attack with the weapon, the opponent doesn't get any bonus to their saving throw for being in cover. This also combines with one of the Incursor's special rules, which is Multispectrum Array. So when resolving an attack made with a ranged weapon by a model in this unit, you don't suffer any modifiers to your ballistic skill. So say for example if you had an Eldar Flyer, which usually gives you -1 or -2 to hit, then these guys would still be happily hitting it on a 3-up. So I think these guys don't have an amazing ranged damage output, but they are very consistent in doing so. You'll always get the 3-up to hit, and you'll never have opponents getting any bonus in cover. So they're absolutely amazing at taking out things like Eldar Rangers, as they've got both minus to hit modifiers and also bonus cover saves. Other things they'll excel at are things like Plague Bearers, who often have a -1 or -2 to hit, or particularly anything like Space Marine Scouts, who get +2 to their armor saves for being in cover, so they'll only be saving on a 4-up against these guys' ranged shots. When you're comparing them to the Infiltrators, they're more consistent in their damage output and are better against things in cover, particularly things that have, say, a 2-up save when they're in cover. But I think that the Marksman Bolt Carbine is very marginally better overall than the Incursors because of its special rule to auto-wound on hit rolls of 6. In all honesty though, I wouldn't really get too hung up on the difference because you don't really take either of these squads for their bolter shots. Their main power is starting up the board, screening other units and hassling your opponent's back lines. Their other unique set of equipment is their paired combat blades. Now the paired combat blades basically boost their close combat damage potential a little bit. When resolving an attack made by this weapon, an unmodified hit roll of 6 scores 1 additional hit. This essentially boosts their standard combat profile by 25% compared with what it would be if they didn't have this special rule. So if you were expecting to get 4 hits before, you'd be getting 5 hits if they have this special rule with the combat blades. It is worse than if they could just carry a combat blade or a chainsword, which will give them an additional base attack. These paired combat blades do not do that, unfortunately. Now the squad has a few options. You can take up to another 5 additional Incursors to make up to a 10-man squad, and then if the squad contains 10 models, then you can potentially split them into 2 5-man combat squads at the start of the battle. I'd probably not bother with this and just take them as individual 5-man units because you get the extra sergeant and also you'll have more troop squads to fill up a battalion and get those additional CPs. The only war gear option that they have is that one Incursor can take a haywire mine, and this really is actually quite a fun little object that can really mess with your opponent's head. So you can prime a haywire mine in the movement phase, so the model that was carrying the mine can place it at any point during their movement, so before or after they move, and they place it within 1 inch of themselves. They have to place it outside 3 inches of enemy models and not within 6 inches of any other haywire mines, so unfortunately you can't just put loads and loads of these all down on one objective to make a massive explosion of death when the opponent comes near. Incidentally, they say you can't put it within 3 inches of the opponent, just so you can't automatically trigger it and essentially just throw the haywire mine directly at them, which I think would be against the fluff of placing a mine rather than having a massive bomb to throw at the opponent. The kit actually comes with a little haywire mine that you can put on a base, and this will represent the mine when it's put down on the battlefield. As it isn't actually a model in your army, it doesn't screen for deep strike and it isn't counted for a model for any rules purposes besides just marking where it is. Now the way it deals damage is that if your opponent moves a model within 3 inches of the mine at any point during the model's move, then the mine detonates, and on a 2-up the unit receives D3 mortal wounds, or D3 plus 1 mortal wounds if the unit is a vehicle. After that, the haywire mine is obviously removed from play as it is blown up. Now it costs 10 points to take this haywire mine, so you are essentially paying 10 points for the chance to do that D3 or D3 plus 1 mortal wounds. I think the best use of the haywire mine would be to put it squarely on an objective in the midfield, so if your opponent feels like they want to go and claim that objective, then they're going to eat D3 mortal wounds for doing so. Probably won't dissuade them, but it will probably kill a few of their enemy models, which is very nice. And if it does make the opponent unable to claim an objective due to one of their models having too few wounds to survive the haywire mine, then that's just absolutely fantastic, as the haywire mine would have stopped them from claiming a victory point or something like that. Now let's move on to their special rules. They have Angels of Death, just like every other Space Marine unit, so they get the bolter discipline, so get to fire their bolters twice at 24 inches if they don't move. They get Shock Assault, so +1 attack on the charge, which will be nice with those combat blades, and they get Combat Doctrines, which they'll benefit most from the Tactical Doctrine, from being able to have -1 on those Oculus Bolt carbines. They get Concealed Positions, so like the Infiltrators and like Space Marine Scouts, they can set up anywhere that's outside 9 inches of the opponent's deployment zone, and further than 9 inches away from enemy models. Like Infiltrators and Scouts, this means that they're great for snagging upfield objectives very early in the game, and can help block your opponent's movement or deep strikers from getting anywhere near your backline heavy weapon damage dealing units. I would say the main value of the squad comes from this rule. If you want to look at the squad very basically, then they're essentially intercessors that start further up the board and pay 2 points over the standard intercessor points cost for doing so. And their last special rule that I've not mentioned is smoke grenades. Similar to the Infiltrators, they have the option to not shoot their weapons and drop a smoke grenade for an additional -1 to hit in your opponent's turn. This could be useful if there's say only 1 or 2 of them left, so they don't have many bolt weapons to shoot, and you want to try and make your opponent have to dedicate more firepower towards clearing the unit. Say if they're sat on an objective or something like that, then you ideally want them to survive. So, the main question with this unit is whether you take them over either Infiltrators, Scouts, or Intercessors. I feel like they sit within a good midpoint between all of these units, offering some of the benefits of each. Like Scouts and Infiltrators, they have the ability to start further up the board and get more Primaris muscle up in your opponent's face. They're very similar in points cost and damage output to the Intercessors, only being a little bit more than them, and they're very similar to the Infiltrators, except they don't pay the extra 3 points per model, which I believe is mainly due to the Infiltrators' Omni Scrambler rule to prevent any deep strike. So overall, I think they're a very interesting option, and if you're thinking about taking any of the other units, then you could consider these guys as an alternative. If I were to run them in a competitive list, I would run 2 or 3 squads of 5 of them to be used as screening units and filling out a battalion. They could be quite nice accompanying an Invicta Warsuit or 2 to secure the objectives behind them after they've gone charging in to mess up the enemy. I'm a little on the fence about the haywire mine. It has the potential to be very, very useful, but it does cost 10 points, and I can see several games it wouldn't come up. Either the squad might get shot and not even get a chance to place the haywire mine, or the opponent might just decide not to walk over to the haywire mine and trigger it, or they might just have enough chaff units to just walk into the haywire mine and not really care if they lose 1 or 2 guardsmen. Let's quickly talk about some of the obvious synergies with this unit. Obviously they're really good in Crimson Fists or Imperial Fists, where their bolters get additional hits on 6s. White Scars would be useful, as when they charge in, being able to fall back and charge something new could really let them wreak havoc and tie up units that don't want to be in close combat at all, such as backline enemy gunline tanks. Ultramarines or Raven Guard would certainly be justifiable, as they would both gain from the tactical doctrine, and Raven Guard in particular, these guys might have the chance to try and assassinate a character, so +1s to hits and wounds from their doctrine could be very useful. As I mentioned in my recent Infiltrators video, which I totally recommend checking out if you haven't already seen it, they have some synergies with some of the Warlord traits and psychic powers that can be used by the Phobos equivalents of the Captain and Librarian. The best, in my opinion, is the Phobos Librarian's Temporal Corridor, where they can make a unit move again in the psychic phase. This is particularly good with White Scars, because they have the potential to charge after this power as well. With that little combo, they could easily get anywhere in your opponent's back line if they haven't screened properly. So, what's my overall take on the unit? I would say they're easily a reasonable pick over either Infiltrators or Intercessors. Being able to set up outside your deployment zone is a really useful rule, so I could easily justify the 2 extra points on top of an Intercessor body to allow that to happen. And if you didn't fancy paying for the Omni Scramblers, which will be amazing in some matchups but kind of useless in others, then these are a decent cut price version of that squad. Infiltrators would cost 110 points for a squad, and these guys are 95 points per squad, which is really quite a big saving, so 3 points per model or 15 points per unit. The lack of Omni Scramblers could mean that these guys are possible to charge out of Deep Strike, but even so, if they're a fair way in front of your other more serious backline units, then it doesn't really matter if these guys get charged and get killed, because then you can just gun down whatever nasty thing decided to do that to them. I personally don't think I'll actually be running these myself in competitive lists, just because they're quite expensive for filling out battalion choices. I think I would prefer to take either Scouts for the screening role, as I mentioned above, because they're cheaper for the same job, or more backfield units such as cheaper Intercessors or cheaper tactical squads. So thank you for listening to another video. The next unit reviews from Auspex Tactics will be on the Phobos Librarian, Repulsor Executioner, and the Suppressor Squad, so they should be coming out within the next week. If you'd like to see any of these videos, please consider subscribing and check out my other videos that I've already made this week. Thanks for listening, and hopefully I'll see you guys in the next video.